Welcome to the Man Amongst Men podcast. Live a life of intentionality, adventure, and brotherhood. Take the inner journey and live out over your edge constantly. Here are your hosts, Dominic and Brian.
If you're like most people, you have no idea where your porn comes from. You just hop online, type in a few keystrokes, and you get down to business. There's a seemingly endless supply as big as the internet itself. And you may wonder why it even matters to ask the question. You see, Brian and I are advocates of conscious porn consumption, but it's hard to be conscious consumers of porn when you don't really understand the system that you're a part of. Because every time you choose to go online and view something, you may be unwittingly creating or contributing to an environment or a system that would appall you. For example, if you remember a number of years ago when Nike was exposed for having child labor manufacturing their shoes, you didn't feel really good about buying Nike shoes anymore. And then you demanded that they make that change. I remember 10 years ago stumbling across the documentary Food Inc. Now, I'm a meat eater present day, and I have been my entire life. But watching that documentary and seeing and being exposed to how some farmers were raising animals in such horrible conditions, and then they'd end up on the grocery store shelves, and I was buying those products, I was contributing to a system that propagated that behavior. But as soon as that was exposed, I now had a choice to vote differently with my dollars. I could buy the organic, grass-fed, free-range, hormone-free animal products, and I can feel good about that. I can feel good about these shoes that I put on my feet because I know the supply chain that they're a part of. But in the porn world, it's much murkier. And so in today's episode, Brian and I give you a behind-the-scenes look with some really big experts in the space. I had a 4-hour conversation with Lisa Ann, one of the top 10 porn stars on the globe. And she has been in the business for 30 years and is a massive change agent in trying to transform the way that porn is filmed and produced in a society where there's only men that are operating those businesses. And she will share with you, and I will share the story that she had provided about some of the things to look for as you are searching for porn that you can feel good about. Brian and I also had a chance to attend an event with Erica Lust, who is the #1 feminist porn director and producer, who is reshaping the way that porn is filmed and the working conditions for its participants. And then finally, I will share with you a documentary that I watched on Netflix, which was simultaneously enlightening, infuriating, heartbreaking, but must see if you plan on watching porn as a part of your future and present day. And that's called Hot Girls Wanted, which is an expose on how young women are brought into the porn world, how they are abused, in many cases physically, emotionally, and traumatized in some cases for life, how they are chewed up and spit out. And for you to understand and know what elements exist in that system so that when you go online, you don't just indiscriminately choose whatever is presented in front of you, but you actively seek porn that you can feel good about watching. So here's the episode of where is the organic, grass-fed, free-range, hormone-free porn?
Porn is something that I don't want to think about. It's something I want to do and then be done with. And as soon as I'm done with the porn, I just want to shut down my browser and forget that it ever happened.
Yeah.
Until the next time,
that you need to,
which is maybe in
20 minutes.
20 minutes, if we're being very generous. Maybe it's the next day. I don't know. But it's something that I don't really want to think about.
I feel like I do the same thing. As soon as I'm done watching porn, I can't click the X button fast enough.
Yeah, it's like, okay, now back to real life.
What's up with that? Like, why do I need to turn it off so quickly? Erase any existence that had ever happened.
Right. Maybe it comes from childhood where we had to do that at the risk of getting caught. Who knows? But all I know is right now, the last thing I want to think about, and the other thing is I want porn to like just come to me. Like I want to go to like a website and it's like, there's the perfect thing. Like, I don't want to search for hours and hours and hours for the right thing. I just want it to be like, boom, there.
Not happening for you?
No, it usually does actually. Because I'm not searching too long. It just pops up. I do my thing, which is masturbating.
Is that the thing
That's
that you
the thing
do
I'm
when
doing.
you watch porn?
Yeah, and then I shut it down as fast as possible and move on with life.
Okay. I had a very interesting conversation with a porn star this past week. We'll go into detail of who that was and what we talked about, but she had said something fascinating about it's like you could go onto one of these porn sites, like a Pornhub or an Xvideos or whatever it is you watch. Like, what sites do you go to?
There's something called Chatterbaits.
What's that?
One of like the live webcam-y
Oh, you're a webcam guy.
situation. The other one I go to, YouPorn.
YouPorn,
Right.
So like you could go to one of those sites, an aggregator, I guess it is, and you may want something like really tame, and they're just going to force feed you the most intense stuff that you didn't even know existed, right? It's kind of like you want to watch like missionary monogamous porn. There may be like one clip there, and then everything else is like gangbangs or dungeons, or all of a sudden you go down this rabbit hole of like stuff that you didn't even know you wanted. And what she was saying is that like a lot of younger folks are getting like turned on to this kind of stuff really super early age. And what are the ramifications of something like that? I don't even know. We can maybe get into that later in this conversation.
I very rarely go into watching porn with, on today's menu is missionary and threesomes and dungeon. For me, it's just like, well, what's there?
Oh, interesting.
When it pops up, it just pops up. I scan the first 5 videos, like based on the thumbnail. I'm like, yeah, that'll work.
That's fascinating.
Which is probably the least conscious way to go about porn, but that's the reality.
That is well, there was a woman I dated. I was like, do you watch porn? She's like, yeah. I'm like, how do you find the porn you watch? She goes, I type porn into Google. I'm like, oh, so when you're hungry, do you type food into it? It's like, and she's like, it works for me. I'm like, good for you. So this past week was a big porn week. Didn't really plan it out this way, but 3 big things I think we're going to talk about today. I had a chance to spend 4 hours with one of the world's most influential porn stars who's changing the industry, and got a really good look behind the scenes at what's happening in that arena. And she's been in the business for 30 years. We'll talk to you about who that is shortly. You and I had a chance to go to I don't know what you want to call it, like a porn event for a feminist, probably the preeminent feminist porn producer, Erica Lust. And we had a chance to watch 4 of her porn videos in a group setting. Yeah,
I went into this event thinking that it was a panel discussion about pornography. And then all of a sudden I'm in a room of 50 people watching porn together, 150 people all watching porn together. And I got to be honest, that was my first like group porn experience, and it was weird.
Same.
It felt strange.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the traditional porn that you and I have been used to watching, so we'll get into that in a minute. And then based on a recommendation from this adult film actress that I spent the time with, she told me to watch this documentary that broke my heart, infuriated me, called Hot Girls Wanted on Netflix. And it's basically a story about how young women enter the world of porn. Like we're talking about 18-year-old women, how they enter this world of porn, how it chews them up, spits them out, how violent it is. And it's useful to understand kind of what goes on behind the scenes. So I guess the theme of this conversation about porn is really about like knowing where your porn comes from and why that matters, why you should care about it.
Is there a term for that? Ethical organic porn? Like I don't know. I don't even know what we call it, but
grass-fed, free-range, ethical, conscious porn.
Yes.
In essence, I think we need a name for it, right? I don't have one for you right now, but I also know that like I remember when I first started watching food documentaries on Netflix, like Food Inc., and I had a chance to see like where my meat was coming from. I was appalled. Like I had no idea that so many chickens were raised in these barns where for the life of the chicken may never go outside, may just be in pitch black the entire time. It's shot up with hormones to an extent where their bodies are so heavy, their legs collapse out underneath them, and then they're slaughtered and we eat that. It transformed the way that I made my buying decisions around my food. Not only for like the humaneness of how the animals were raised, but also like what was I putting into my body, right? Like it changed that when I had a chance to look behind the scenes. When we found out that Nike was using like child labor to make the shoes that we wear on our feet, that doesn't feel good. And so we make different buying decisions. In the porn world, there's a whole world behind the scenes that we don't have a chance to see. And there are women who are being abused, taken advantage of, chewed up and spit out. And again, like we don't have these conversations about porn to shame it, but we're having these conversations to be like, do you know where it's coming from? Do you know the system that you're a part of? And are you, based on your choices and how you consume porn, are you perpetuating a system that has violence against women.
Right.
That has like young women being really taken advantage of by older men who are making lots of money on them, because the whole system, the porn stars that I spent this time with, let me know that every major owner of large porn companies are all men. There are no women who are up at the top making decisions. So it's all men abusing women at a very early age. And so getting a sense of like what that looks like behind the scenes, so that you and I suppose if we're going to be doing porn, that we're contributing to a better solution and not a problem.
I love the analogy of the meat, like Food Inc., and therefore I'm going to eat better meat because of what I'm putting into my body matters.
Yeah.
And Nike, like the shoes and child labor, like I don't feel good about buying and wearing that. But with the sex and porn industry, like a lot of other topics that we talk about, it's got a uniqueness to it.
How so?
And I feel like this uniqueness is nobody can see what I'm doing when it comes to porn. Right? Like, yes, I personally want an ethical cow, an organic cow, free-range cow, and like I want to wear shoes that represent something good, like because that's good, a good thing to do for the whole world. But there's also an element of, well, my body's going to look a certain way, I'm going to be healthy. There's an exterior to it. I want people to know that I'm wearing Toms because they do good things in the world as opposed to Nike. Right? But when it comes to porn, like that's between me, myself, and I.
Oh, it's interesting.
And so there's no like external judgment, like you're eating a burger and you're not vegan. Like there's none of that. So when it comes to porn, it's like it really, to change a habit, like a porn habit, one, being conscious of this. I'm so excited to hear what your conversations had been this week.
Yeah.
And to see if that's enough. Is that enough for me to really want to change my porn habits, knowing that there isn't that outside social influence?
So there's a couple things I hear you saying, like, first of all, there's like this element of I want credit for it. If I'm going to change my behavior, then I want people to know, I want to be patted on the back, right? Like when you eat the organic beef or whatever, like you buy the Toms. I think the bigger component to it, though, is like where you started, which is when I'm doing porn, as soon as it's over, I'm going to pretend like it never happened until the next time I need to do porn. And what we're asking people is to do the opposite right now. Like we're asking you to think about it when you're not needing it for some sort of like release, for some sort of sexual, like we're asking you to think about it on an entirely different level. And the reason for that, and this goes back to some of those earlier porn episodes that we did, where there's those 5 stages that every man goes through with respect to his journey with porn. That third stage that 95% of men will be stuck at for the rest of their life is that drifting stage. Beating off the porn, you don't know why your tastes are the way that they are. You don't know how it's desensitizing you potentially to real relationships and real women. You don't know why what was turning you on 3 years ago is now just like disinteresting. So there's that escalation. And what we're trying to do here is to create that interruption so you can think more deeply, but also do it in a way where it feels better. It feels good to you. You understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Almost like that was a really good porn session. Being real about it. I've been going to one same website for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
So like I love this. I want to hear more.
Okay. If I gave you the choice of where you want to begin, Brian. So we've got the feminist porn producer, we've got the porn star, and we've got the porn documentary. Where shall we dive in first?
Oh, let's go porn star.
The porn star is a woman by the name of Lisa Ann. So if you were to go on...
Everybody instantly Googles Lisa Ann.
Yes.
Who are we talking about?
Lisa Ann is probably the number one MILF in the game. I think 46 years old. She's been in the business for 30 years. I think she started stripping at the age of 16 and then got into porn maybe like 5 years after that. She has seen, and I don't think there's a woman who has been in the game as long as she has. Because porn's an industry that like chews people up and spits them out, chews women up and spits them out very quickly, right? There's always someone, one of the lines in the documentary Hot Girls Wanted that just is appalling is this guy says, every minute another woman turns 18 years old, I will never run out, right? It's like,
wow.
It's like just this dehumanizing way of looking at a human being, right?
That grosses me out.
Doesn't feel good, right? But Lisa Ann is this like remarkable woman. First of all, I've never watched any of her porn. I don't know if she would find that offensive that I've not watched her porn, but I think there's a part of me that just like wants to get to know her on her business level, on her professional level, and on her, she's making a movement to change the porn industry level. And I want to see that first before I watch any of her stuff. And I don't know if watching her stuff will cloud like my judgment or cloud my interactions with her. I got introduced to Lisa Ann through a mutual friend, and she started following some of our stuff, Brian. Like, she started seeing our posts on Instagram, and she reached out and said, hey guys, like, what you're doing is awesome. I want to be a part of the cause. And so she's offered up part of her expertise to being kind of like an informal mentor to us. She's already agreed to do a couple of our podcasts. It'll be fascinating. I think maybe the only woman who was in the business back when porn stars were treated like queens. There were only a handful of women that were contract women. This was like the 80s or 90s.
This is like pre-internet days.
Yeah. And I have to make that clear. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that this was pre-internet days. There were, I don't know, a few dozen women who were in that business. And then there were no people on their iPhones just like uploading it. You had to have a studio. You had to have like 40 people and a production crew to film porn. And so a woman was treated fairly well in that environment. And she remembers what that was like. And if you read her book, I think it's called The Life by Lisa Ann, it talks about that. You contrast that with the way that a woman's brought into porn now. I think the majority of porn that's filmed these days is just amateur women, right? Someone who just was 18 years old, who wanted to leave their home, who wanted to get out from underneath their parents' reign and feel a sense of freedom. And they'll fly to Miami or South Beach, et cetera, and, get hooked up with some guy who funnels them out and farms them out to all these different porn producers. And this is where shit goes really wrong. That gets into the Hot Girls Wanted thing. But I spent these 4 hours with Lisa Ann walking around Central Park and talking about what goes on behind the scenes. Weird side note, when we were walking on Central Park West, Lisa Ann is on my right, and then coming towards us is George Stephanopoulos, like one of the world's preeminent news producers or newscasters, et cetera. And he like looks at her, and I'm looking at him, and she's looking at me. I'm like, this is the weirdest. This
is a pivotal moment for you in your life. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And what Lisa Ann has said is that she has now become kind of this informal mentor to women who are the ages of like 18 to 30, who are reaching out to her not in the industry, saying that they're having sex with men who have been raised on porn. And these women are like, hey, every guy is choking me, spitting on my face, wanting to come on my face, wanting to pull my hair, wanting to spank me, and all without asking. It's all just kind of like assumed that that's what these women want. And she says in many cases, it's heartbreaking because these women don't know saying no is an option. And what she's saying is that a lot of what's being portrayed in porn is perpetuating that. One of the other things that she says is rampant in porn right now, incest porn. So if like you were to go on YouPorn or X videos, almost everything is like mom seduces daughter's boyfriend, or stepmom seduces, or sister and brother, stepsister. It all starts with like the step stuff, and then it navigates into the actual mom having sex with son. And Lisa Ann's saying that in a lot of the emails that she's getting, there are young men emailing her saying, now I'm having fantasies about my mom.
Wow. There is, especially for the younger guys that are in porn, there is no separation between reality and fantasy.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is what I should be doing.
Well, it starts off at fantasy, right? And then that's how these things go. It's kind of like it starts off at fantasy, and then all of a sudden it's just like, well, what would that be like? What would that be like? And then you keep going down that path, and all of a sudden it's like maybe they're a genuine desire, genuine curiosity. She refuses to film any porn of that nature, but she's at the status where she can call those shots. She's so in demand, right? But you talk about a lot of the other women who show up for their porn shoots, like in many cases, they don't even know what they're showing up to film on that day.
We talk a lot about programming our brains based on the content that we bring in. You and I do that through podcasts. We do it through books. We do it through events that we go through. And I've never really thought of porn as being one of those inputs to program our brain. And that's what I'm hearing, right? People are seeing incest, therefore they're like, oh, this is an actual thing I want to do. I'm curious, okay, so do we just not watch porn altogether because it's programming our brains? Or are we watching ethical or righteous porn?
This goes back to like where we started. It's like I don't want to think about porn. So when I go into a porn site, like my critical thinking is shut down, and all I'm doing is reacting to what's there. And does my dick react to this? Is it exciting? And do I go? And what ends up happening is like that right there is your gateway. That is your entry point to drift, right? And so if you relax your critical thinking and then you end up on one of these sites that are engineered to send you down all these rabbit holes, you may end up down this one rabbit hole just out of pure curiosity. It's like, what does this one look like? What does this gangbang look like? What does this throat fucking video look like? And then all of a sudden you watch one, maybe it turns you on, and then all of a sudden you need to watch another one. And then all of a sudden it becomes like your ritual. And then all of a sudden you're addicted to throat fucking videos where women are getting abused, or you're addicted to gangbangs and now you can't have like regular monogamous or one-on-one sex. And it's not necessarily that these things are bad. It's just that you could be getting programmed without your real knowledge or even consent. The deeper, more wicked things that I see that Lisa Ann shared about is that the number one way that kids are getting into porn right now is on their video gaming systems.
Really?
Their video gaming systems have pop-ups now where it's like YouPorn and...
because it's all connected.
It's all connected because like video gaming systems are all internet-based, right? So it's like Xbox, PlayStation, and if you don't have those safe searches or filters, and I don't even know what those look like, but she was like, so many of the kids who are 8 or 9 or 10 years old. I have men who are now older reach out to me and say, I've been watching you since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Because and she's like, how the hell did you... Oh, it was on my video gaming system. My parents didn't let me have a phone, but they let me have a video gaming system.
Wow. So, yeah, we didn't get that while playing Zelda or GoldenEye.
No. Tetris.
Right.
No.
There's no porn pop-ups of check out this MILF.
No, there's not.
Wow.
To make this even worse, dude, like these video games are so well engineered to get your heart rate up. The designers of these games will have kids hooked up to like a blood pressure test machine, like while they're testing the game.
Wow.
And
really?
Yes. I read this in the book Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. It's by Adam Alter. It's a fascinating book. They'll take kids, they'll have them play this like test video game, and they'll have their blood pressure monitored. And if the kid's blood pressure does not reach the level of what you would experience on cocaine or sex, they will go back and re-engineer the game to get it to that level.
Wow. So let me get this straight. So we've got a kid that's maybe 8 years old on a gaming system, playing a game that's designed to put their body into a state of excitement, reception, all the good drugs in our body. And then all of a sudden they're like, bam, slapped in the face with a porn ad.
The porn ad is done separately, right? The gaming designers are the ones who are saying, is our game interesting enough, right? And so we're going to re-engineer the game so that it's so addictive, a kid's going to want to play it for 12 hours straight. And then he's going to want to bring in his friends and do that too. That's how we make money. So once that game then gets engineered to that level, then they sell it. Now a kid is playing it. Now he is in that state where all these chemicals are flooding his body at a very early age. And then that's when, some other porn site comes in and then bang, puts the pop-up. And the kid's like, oh, that's interesting. While he's in this heightened state of arousal already, as fertile of a playground as you could possibly, and then he goes down that rabbit hole. And that's where some shit starts to happen. That making sense?
Yeah, I assume they hit pause first and then go down the rabbit hole. But yeah, wow. Okay, I'm all kinds of uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, and that goes back to just like, you and I've talked about this. Like, I'm so thankful that I grew up in that analog 2D porn era where it was like a Playboy magazine.
Right. Thanks, Playboy.
Yeah. Those were some of the interesting parts of the conversation with Lisa Ann. I mean, there were way more, and she's doing some really amazing stuff to revolutionize the industry. But I think I'll save that for a future conversation, because what I think is most interesting to our listeners right now is understanding what goes on behind the scenes, what happens with women in the porn that they're watching and that you're choosing to consume. And, one of the questions I asked Lisa Ann, I was like, listen, if we want to watch porn that we know like a woman consented to, that the conditions are sanitary, that everyone feels good about the porn that they're filming, how would I go about doing that? And she didn't have an answer.
When I go to the grocery store, I see it's certified organic.
Yeah.
Whole Foods tells me that it's been grass-fed and pasture-raised or whatever. So that's what I was going to ask, is like to change any kind of behavior or consuming habits, like what do we watch?
Exactly.
I mean, how do I know that this is something? And then also, do I have to pay for it? Because I don't pay for porn.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Like,
that's another thing,
you never
right?
had to pay for porn. And
right.
The one thing that she said was like searching keywords. So if like you search keywords just like intimacy or kissing or like some of the more tame keywords, then you may go down that path and find porn that's not so like intense. But if you start, searching keywords like gangbangs or cum shots or whatever, that's where it gets like pretty intense. And the conditions, the working conditions for the women could be questionable. That is not a long-term solution. That is not a long-term solution. There needs to be an easy way for us to be able to go and say, I know if I go on this site, you know what I mean? It's kind of like if you go to the farmer's market, you feel comfortable with, like, you know, you're getting like whatever. There's no site right now that allows you to filter that out and makes it easy for you. And I asked her, I was like, of the 20 biggest porn producers, I said, are there any women that are at the senior executive ranks? She said, none. None. Maybe an accountant. And that's why the porn that comes out continues to be the same kind.
Well, I think this is a good jumping point to the Erica Lust event. A female porn producer that's producing a different type of porn,
For that exact reason.
Right.
Because everything is filmed from the male perspective. And she said that she was bored watching the same shit over and over and over again. These cheesy scenarios, these people who looked like they were acting, didn't look like they were actually, there was like an intimacy. You're always focused on the dick and the woman's body. The man's experience outside of his dick is not really focused on. The camera quality's shitty, and she wanted to change all of that.
Yeah. There was an event at a place called the House of Yes in Brooklyn, New York. Dominic and I went to it last week on Tuesday. I thought it was a panel to talk about porn, similar to what we're doing.
Same.
Turns out it wasn't. It was about 40 minutes worth or 4 videos worth of what Erica Lust, who was the keynote, what she's produced in porn. And it's a female-focused, female-run business.
Yep.
She has a website, I think it's called X Confessions.
X Confessions, yeah.
And the idea is she crowdsources people's fantasies, and then she produces videos based on those fantasies, and they last anywhere between 8 minutes to, I don't know, maybe even less than that, 4 minutes up to 12 minutes.
Yeah. I think like some of them are actually, I think we saw the shortened clips. I think that she actually has like half hour, 45-minute long videos. That's my understanding.
And a couple of things I took outside of, we'll talk about the porn in a second, but outside of the porn itself, I found what was interesting, how they shoot some of the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And like what it really takes to film a high quality cinematic porn. And like the stuff that I'm used to watching, like it could have been done on an iPhone. An iPhone 1, probably.
Yeah.
And the only thing that like makes a difference between one and another is like, is it high def or is it from the 70s? Like that's pretty much the level of quality that I'm looking for. Totally. Right. And so when she showed us these, I was like, wow, like that is interesting. And it was interesting for me for several reasons, but I'd like to get your take on it too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the things that she said was that part of her mission is making sure that a different kind of porn is available for people to watch. Different bodies, different scenarios, different focuses on where the camera goes, right? Not just on the dick, but also like panning out to see like what's going on with the people's facial expressions and what's going on with their bodies. What's going on with the background? How does that play like a role in this? And based on the 4 videos we watched, it was jarring to me. I think I would say my sexual tastes are fairly conservative in the sense of like I watch, I suppose, like one-on-one porn, maybe like 2-on-1 porn, like threesomes every once in a while. I don't really go too far out on the spectrum. And the stuff that we watched, like there was one video where it was just a man's asshole, how to explain, like zoomed in
3 centimeters from the asshole itself,
and on like a 70-foot screen that we're watching, and it was like
it was the biggest asshole I've ever seen.
Yes, it was like in slow motion, the highest definition video you've ever seen, and it was just like puckering and unpuckering.
Yeah, it turns out it doesn't look at all like a starfish. It turns out.
It was so uncomfortable.
I've never got an opportunity to see an asshole that big in front and center before.
Never thought I would. And at first, you don't know it's a man's asshole because it's that close. You can't tell when it's that close.
Yeah, an asshole's an asshole at that point. Just, you don't know what it is.
Yes, that's right. There was this other video where it was 4 people, right? It was like 2 couples, and there was like 2 men, 2 women. And then they get into this like huge, mushy, like sex orgy where it's so fluid where the guys are on the guys and the women are on the women. And there was this one dude with this big dick that just, the dick by the end of the movie had been everywhere. Like it was in every vagina, it was in every ass, it was in every mouth. I'm like, is there any place this dick has not been?
It's well traveled.
It was so well traveled. But I noticed how uncomfortable I was watching that because I'd honestly never seen man on man before in my life. and forcing myself not to look away, navigating those feelings.
It was, yeah, man, I totally feel you because, like, yes, there was the content of the porn.
Yeah.
There's a couple other elements at play just in the room.
Yeah.
Right? First of all, it was probably 85% women in the room.
True.
Second, it was a group of people.
Yes.
We didn't have any control over the type of porn that was being played.
Yeah. Good call.
Like usually every time I'm watching porn, I get a selection of an unlimited selection of like what I could look at, right? This was like, nope, this is what you're going to watch. You're going to watch it with a group. And we were all sitting down on the floor. We weren't in chairs and it was not an easy exit. Like there were times when the porn was on, I wanted to leave the room.
Same.
But it was.
But wait, why did you want to leave the room? Because you're uncomfortable? Because you need to go take care of business?
Because I was uncomfortable. Okay. I didn't have to pee at all. I almost wanted to fake that I had to pee so I could leave the room during this a bit uncomfortable scenario.
During the asshole scene.
Especially during the asshole scene. And for the record, it went straight from asshole to balls after that. And I'm very sensitive about the balls. So
That's right.
So like there was all of those dynamics at play. And also I did want to hear what Erica Lust and Bryony Cole, who was hosting the event, and a few other ones were going to say afterwards. So I didn't want to just like leave. Yep. But when I was watching the porn itself, so with all those dynamics at play, when I was watching the porn itself, what came up for me was, again, I would have exited this scenario at any other point except for the container that was set. It was hard to get out of, but I'm glad I didn't, because the porn, when I look at the 4 films that they showed, for me, it was refreshing because it was something I'd never seen before.
Yep.
The storylines were semi-interesting. Even some were funny. I found myself laughing at a porn, and I was like, I've never laughed at a porn before. This is really strange. Even the giant asshole on the screen was like interesting. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is high def, and and all that porn was just close-ups of genitalia. And I'd never seen genitalia like that before.
That close-up.
Right. So I don't know if I would go after that and consume that or even pay money for that going forward. But at least in that moment for me, it was something that was refreshing, different, and for some reason it felt a little bit better.
Yeah.
Typically you want to like close off the browser and be done with the porn and go about my day.
Part of that, at least I'm only speaking from my experience, why I felt similarly is because I felt like I was opening up my world to something bigger. What Erica Lust is doing is something I think is so admirable. She is providing awesome work conditions. She's providing a different perspective of the way that we have sex that is more in line with real sex than the porn world is, right?
And Dominic, one of the things she talked about afterwards, I thought was maybe the most interesting part, was how do you source these porn stars?
Oh, yeah.
Pay them more. The conditions need to be right. Like, how do you find them?
Yeah.
And her answer for that was, in the beginning, when she first started, it was really hard.
Yeah.
She had to go to multiple sources and use people multiple times for different roles. But she said now that it's become more popular and she's got a following, people come to her. And now her problem is different. It's not finding the right person. It's screening those people to make sure that they really want to be doing this. Yeah. And that was what she said. I think a lot of times, and I know, and I'll speak from my perspective, was, like people doing porn are people that don't have other choices. Like they're stuck in this sex work world. And what she brought to light for me was, no, these are normal people doing other things. A lot of them have other jobs, but they actually want to be doing this.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, that's interesting and that feels good.
I think she's able to attract those kinds of people because of the fact that she's doing it in a way that feels good. The whole intention behind the work that she's doing is, well, first of all, it's very intentional, right? It is to provide us a different lens into the way that real people have sex. And also for other lifestyles and how they have sex, because there are some of the videos that we watched were gender fluid, right? People going back and forth between each other. Or there was this one video where a man and a woman dressed up as the opposite sex, right? So the man dressed up as a woman, the woman dressed up as a man. They went on a date and then they had sex that night. Some of those more, like, I don't want to call it marginal, but like some of the, I guess, non-traditional types of sexual behaviors she wanted to showcase in film.
Yeah, it's not what a male-owned,
that's right,
heterosexual CEO would be like, yeah, let's go do that.
That's right. That's right. Like misogynistic, or people are feeling good about participating in it. And it's like they're a part of a movement. They're in on the ground level. And I think it's really cool that she's sourcing people's fantasies and turning them into movies. She's like kickstarting them, basically.
Right. Kind of
people
genius.
Are crowdfunding it. Yeah, it is genius. And And I talked to Lisa Ann about Erica Lust. Lisa Ann is a huge fan of Erica Lust. She's like, I love what Erica Lust is doing. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a chance for them to work together at some point in the future. But what was interesting for me, man, is that those videos that Erica showed were not arousing for me. They were jarring for me. They opened up a perspective. They've like been seared into my memory. I mean, it's been now about a week and a half or 2 weeks since we watched it. They've resonated with me, and they've clearly cracked open a new sense of awareness. But what's interesting is like I do not find myself drawn to wanting to go to that website, like to her website, and watch those videos to get off. And you know what? I did go to her website to check out like all the other videos that she put up, and I realized why I'm not drawn to go to that website. Part of it was because I was worried that I was going to get surprised. Here's what I mean by that. When we were watching those videos at House of Yes, you'd be watching like these two couples having sex with each other, like the traditional way that I'm consuming porn. It's like a man is on a woman's on a man, and then bang, in a moment's notice, it was like a dick going into another man's asshole.
And you're like, whoa.
Yes.
Hold on a second.
Yes,
Right.
and I didn't know that was coming, and I was like, ah!
Yeah.
And
There was no warning.
there was no warning, right? And I was like, oh. And so for me, it's like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. When I go to her site, that's like a feeling I have. So I almost feel, I don't know if
Yeah, because the title is such a good. I didn't think about this. This is great. The titles that we typically see on the porn sites that we typically go to, it's like MILF Gangbang. Or you know, mom stepdaughter. Or like, it's very explicit on like what you're getting.
Yes.
With this, it wasn't. Like the titles were
Gender bender.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that one is kind of. I guess that gives you kind of a heads up.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's the only one I remember.
But the other one was something like
The next door neighbor.
School couple, or next door neighbor, or something like that. Yeah, and it wasn't super specific. And all of a sudden, it was like, yeah, you're right, guy on guy. I was like, wait. I didn't sign up for this.
What she's doing is amazing. I think it's going to change the landscape of porn. I think enough people like us start to demand that there are better working conditions, that, you know, we know where the porn is coming from. We know the people behind it. Like, so Erica Lust, now I know who the producer is. And like, I like her.
I would have loved to see down like the business model behind it, because these were like, again, high quality films. I remember we talked about it afterwards. We're like, how many of these can they possibly produce? I can't say I've ever gone to a website to watch the same video over and over again. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, how often are these things getting produced? And like, am I the only one that consumes porn that way? Or do like women like to watch the same thing over and over again? Maybe that's okay. And so I think for me, I went to the website also and checked it out. And for one, I had to get over the hurdle of, do I want to pay for this?
Sure.
That's something I'm not used to. Two, like, if I'm going to pay for it, is it going to satisfy what I want as far as quantity goes and as far as genre goes?
Yes.
And that was, I think, what you and I were saying. Like, I'm not sure if those were, it was refreshing or it was awakening, but also not like what I want to go to on a daily, weekly basis.
So I'd be happy to pay for porn that I knew came from a good source where everyone felt good about it, and also that it did the job for me, right? Like that I could be aroused by it.
Yeah. I wonder, Dom, if we have a bias because of the type of porn that we have been watching.
I'm
and
sure.
Like, this is something that's so far out there that's like,
I'm totally sure of it. And one of the things I feel even a little bit uncomfortable talking about, but I'll put it out there as well, is when I was looking at the porn that was on the site, there were even the ones that would be maybe geared towards me. I wasn't attracted to the women that were there. I don't watch a lot of porn, and I'm not attracted in my regular life to women who are like silicone, plastic, like, you know, Barbie dolls. I'm not attracted to that. So like when I do consume porn, I look for women who are natural. Like that's what I like. And when I was looking at the videos on her site, like I couldn't find women that got me going. So there was almost a bit of guilt that I felt for that. I'm like, oh, is this something that, I don't know, like have I been conditioned to wanting a certain level of attractiveness? And a part of it is like, well, I can only kind of control what I'm attracted. I can't control what I'm attracted to necessarily. But then the other part of it comes up is, have I been conditioned to attract it? So I don't know. I'm caught in this weird place that I think as more time goes on and more videos are filmed, I'll have a chance to get a better gauge on it.
Interesting. The part that I did find attractive and also different than any other porn I've seen is I am so used to like the penetration and just constantly seeing like that. And so when I'm like traditionally watching porn, you're looking for something you almost can't get enough of.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, like more or harder or whatever. And these films didn't show that. These films, they showed the connection and almost intimacy of it. There wasn't a lot of actual penetration that you saw. There's a little bit, but not much. Like that wasn't the focus.
That's a good call.
I did find that arousing.
Very good point. So maybe that's a part of the reconditioning process. Like the porn that we jump in on, you'll hit play on YouPorn or something like that, and it's like bang, it's already like the insertion process is well underway. These videos, like there's a story arc, right? There's like a beginning, a middle, an end. There's a seduction to it. There's a revealing element to it. It's like real sex, right? Like in real sex, like you don't just jump in with it doesn't just happen right away. There's a buildup.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to watch porn that's more like that reconditions us to the ritual, to the seduction, to that elaboration.
I feel as though like bringing that into real life, like, right, if the porn is programming us to a certain extent, even to a little bit, yes, in real life, when I'm having sex, like, I like to, like, I'll look at the insertion. I'm like, yeah, like, that's me,
Same.
almost like self-porn star, right? But, like, what if I, like, instead of that, I looked up and I saw my partner's face.
Yep.
And I saw the rest of her body. And I find that with my partner now, like so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so amazing. And to see the porn actually show what I see, like in my real life was kind of cool.
I think you're hitting on something big here because we talk to a lot of women who have sex with guys who are definitely pornified, meaning the guys are just like...
Pornified, great word.
Yeah, right? They're pornified. They've spent so much time watching it. They've learned all their behavior from it. And the women are like, it's almost like I'm not even there. Actually, one woman told me, she's like, I feel sometimes like a socket, like a wall socket that men just plug into. They pull electricity from me and then they release. I am just a source of electricity and they take from me. They just focus on my different body parts or whatever it is. Like I'm not even there really. And that's probably conditioning from porn where there is no intimacy or connection. It's just bodies banging. But what Erica Lust is doing is different. It's that other version of every one of those films that we watched. There was something about like the two people or multiple people coming together and sharing a moment and then like something going down from there. And subconsciously, when you consume enough porn from that perspective, I have no doubt that will affect the way that you have sex.
Yeah. And think about how the Erica Lust films ended. Like when I look at a traditional porn film, it basically ends when the guy comes.
Yeah, and then it fades to black.
And then it fades to black, and that's it. And either you finished in sequence with the porn, or you go on to the next one, which then starts a new insertion point, right? But Erica Lust films were interesting because even at the end of those films, I thought it was hilarious, like the couple-on-couple thing.
Yes.
It was them walking out of the couple's house and being like, wow, like that got crazy.
Yeah.
It's almost like this like debrief, like now they're coming back together, which is something you would never see in a traditional porn.
Yeah.
So there's like the lead up and the ramp up, and also like something happens after having sex.
And I wonder if that part of the film does something differently for us than what we talked about before, which is as soon as the porn's over, we turn it off as fast as possible. I'm wondering if that like makes it less guilty, less shameful. Maybe you do watch it to the end. Maybe you watch it like the way you would watch a normal movie, which is you start it and then you watch it to the end and then you do your thing, versus like beating off, turning it off in the middle.
Right. Like, how upset would you be if you're watching a normal movie and all of a sudden the good guy kills the bad guy and it's just like, that's it, done. It's like, wait a second. Like, something happened afterwards.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I think it could be cool to just hit on this last topic of the documentary called Hot Girls Wanted, because it's almost the exact opposite. It's a startling contrast to what Erica Lust is doing. So this documentary on Netflix called Hot Girls Wanted, I think it came out in 2014 or 2015. Hot Girls Wanted is basically titled after ads that were being placed on Craigslist. So there are these men that live all throughout the country, but they feature this one guy in South Beach who places these ads. He's got like a 5-bedroom home. He's this 21-year-old kid who said that I used to be a loser in high school. Everyone used to pick on me, and now I'm the one with the last laugh because I've got these hot girls coming to my place, and I farm them out to all these porn spots, and I make good money. What he does is he puts these ads in Craigslist, Hot Girls Wanted or other names like that, or how about a free flight to South Beach? And then you have these young women who are like barely 18 years old from small towns, from big cities, who have never had freedom before. Maybe they've never left their hometown. Maybe they live in an oppressive household and they're just dying to find a way out. And then all of a sudden there's this like glamorous offer to be chosen, to be picked, to come make lots of money, to be desired by men. And this is how like the women are talking about it in this video, right? To get on a plane, to be flown somewhere exotic. And they come there for freedom. It seemed like the biggest theme about why these young women were going was because of this ability to have control over their lives and to get freedom. And when they got there...
Don, just on that point, so it wasn't that they needed the money.
It didn't seem like money was the number one.
Interesting.
It seemed like freedom and excitement was number one. Money was also a seductive element. It was like icing on the cake, but it didn't seem like money was the reason why. It was freedom and control over their lives. Yeah.
So the money could have been a part of the freedom, but the main point was like, I'm getting out, I'm doing something, I feel valued.
Totally.
Interesting.
And so these women show up, and that's where this guy says, every minute of every day another woman turns 18, I will never run out of product, basically. So these young women show up. A male porn actor, I think he's been in the business for 5 years, who kind of says, here's the life cycle of one of these women. Worst case scenario, she's here for 2 months, goes back home. Really good scenario, she figures out a bit of the game, and she's here for 3 to 6 months. Best case scenario, she makes her way in, she has a video that does well, she goes to some of the better porn sites, and then she's here for a year. But that's it, Wow. 99.9% of the women do not stay in the industry past a year. Now, that was one guy being interviewed. I don't know if this guy has access to actual statistics, but what was featured over the course of the next 90 minutes of the film was it kind of looked like that's exactly what happened. The women who enter, basically, in the first 2 months, you film maybe 20 videos. If you don't get picked up by, a major outlet, if people aren't watching your porn, then what ends up happening, and this is where it gets really shitty, the women then get farmed out to these niche films, niche videos where you're starting to do some weird shit.
Got it.
So the two that broke my heart and also were infuriating, one was called Latina abuse, and then one was called, I think, facial abuse. And this one called facial abuse, it's literally this misogynistic dude who literally on the website writes, I hate women, these whores who come and just want to get fucked. It's just horrible language. They abuse these women to the point of throat fucking, to the point where the goal is to make them puke. And in this video, in this documentary, dude, there was this one video where it looked like the girl, and their eyes are bloodshot, they're just grabbing the woman by the neck. It hurts to watch. There was this one scene, it's still stuck in my memory, and I'm sorry if there's a trigger for anyone who's listening, but it was, so you can turn this off right now, but the woman had clearly thrown up on the floor, and they were making her lick it up.
Oh.
Horrible, horrible stuff. And so women are pushed into that arena. Now, you think about it. You're 18 years old. You leave your life. You're in a vulnerable situation. There aren't a lot of mentors around guiding you the way. You're in this house with some douchebag who's 21 years old. He doesn't know shit. And now you got to make something happen for yourself, right? And so you show up to one of these shoots and you find out that you're in one of those videos. And a lot of these women don't know that they can say no. One of the women that's featured in the film, she's like, I showed up at this site thinking I was just going to do a blowjob video. It sounded easy. And then we started filming, and it's one guy with a camera. That's it, in a hotel room. And 15 minutes in, he tells me, oh, by the way, there's a throat fucking video. And the throat fucking is the one where you just basically get your throat abused and you throw up. And she was like, I felt scared. I was closed in a room with this guy, and I didn't know if I could say no. We'd already started to film, so I did it. And she was like, I don't know if I was just raped or not.
Wow. So interesting, Domino. As you're telling me this story, I'm having a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had this underlying belief, and maybe it was a safety assumption, that anybody that I'm watching that would actually make it to YouPorn, they totally know what they're getting into. So therefore, regardless of what happens, they're into it.
That's right.
And I think what you're highlighting is that's not the case at all.
That's not the case at all. And one of the women featured in this film was the Duke University porn star. So Lisa Ann told me about this woman. The Duke University porn star, apparently, I guess she was at Duke. She needed money to pay for her tuition. She started to do porn. And she did one of these throat fucking videos. I think it was on either facial abuse or Latina abuse or something like that. And she was so beat up that when she went to the airport the next day, they wouldn't allow her on the flight because like her face was all like swollen and puffy. Her neck had like choke marks on it. They wouldn't let her on the flight because they were like, what happened to you? And then it got exposed. And then there were lots of people who were like coming down on her for being what she was being. And then there were people coming down in the industry for doing what they were doing. And she was caught in the middle of all this. And then she became someone who spoke out about it. But Lisa Ann actually took this woman under her wing and kind of like kept her safe because like this woman was on her own dealing with the entire world coming down upon her. And so the reason why I share about this video is exactly what you just said, Ryan, which is why I share about this documentary is exactly what you said, which is there's almost this assumption that we want to believe, or this false story that we want to believe, that if a person ends up on one of those videos, that they've consented, that they know exactly what they're getting into. I'm a big believer that like we make choices in our lives and we need to hold our own responsibility for that. And at the same point in time, there's a system that's set up that seduces, manipulates, and abuses people who are on their own, who don't have the mental capacity, who don't have the mentorship, who don't have the right guidance, and chews them up and spits them out and can create some like super lasting damage to them, like some of these women, and their videos are there forever.
I've heard this term ethical porn before, or consent-based porn, and I always felt like I was in the safe zone because I go to the normal, like the U porn site. Like I'm not going to latinaabuse.com paying $20 a month for like this niche thing that I know is like raw, like bad. Right? So I felt it was safe. Now, as you're telling the story, I'm like, oh, none of that feels safe now. Like, I don't know. I actually don't know.
That's right.
Even some of the normal stuff. So, wow. I feel like that's at least, I'm going to go watch this documentary now, but that's enough for me to start to change habits.
Yes. Like just to get curious about it. So after that Hot Girls Wanted came out, it became so popular on Netflix that they came up with like another season. There's like 8 episodes. Hot Girls Wanted Remix or something like that. That's not the right name, so you have to Google it. But the first episode of that season, Erica Lust is featured in that. So there's 8 more episodes to watch. And apparently Netflix is now looking for any kind of content around that arena that helps to illuminate what's going on in that porn world and offer up better alternatives. At least Anne is saying that like they're really interested in that because people are demanding it now. What you and I are really trying to do here is to say, let's get smarter about this stuff.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be cool? A story I heard before was that a mom had a son, and the son was maybe, let's say, 8 or 9 years old. And what she decided to do was, instead of just letting it happen on his gaming console or on the internet, she decided to find paper-based, like 2D analog porn that glorified women, that wasn't obnoxious, and actually put it on his bed and said, hey, I know you're getting to an age where you're probably going to find some of this stuff. I wanted to let you know there's some good stuff out there and some stuff that's not good out there. So I wanted you to have this. It doesn't have to be weird. Talk to me if you want to or not.
Yep.
That was her way of introducing ethical porn, right? Essentially to that child life. Now, we could debate whether that's too young or that's right or that's wrong, but that was her decision. And wouldn't it be great if we could even do this in the video world? Because if you have somebody like Lisa Ann saying, like, actually, there's not a ton of options right now. How did you find porn? How do we all find porn, right? Which is like heard about it from a friend or stumbled upon it. And so like the more conscious that we can be, I think that that's great when it comes to even the education, because the reality is we as guys at a young age do have access to this stuff and we're learning from it, period. Like that's not debatable. That's happening.
It is.
So like how can we take some of this stuff that is being created in a way that starts to reshape our behavior?
And to that point about like how you introduce this to the younger generation, I believe there's a website called thepornconversation.org. It's actually, you know who started that site?
Who?
Erica Lust. This
Erica
woman's
Lust is on
everywhere.
top of
She's
it.
amazing. She's amazing. Thepornconversation.org is basically like, how do you have that conversation with your children?
Great.
Yeah, because she has 2 daughters, I believe, and she wanted to figure out like, how do I have that conversation? How do we introduce it? Where do we point them? Because like just saying don't watch porn or just burying your head in the sand, those are not strategies, right? Because we're finding that if you even talk to your kids about porn at the age of 8 years old, it's too late. They've already seen it. You know, they've already seen it. You and I are not parents, so we haven't come up against that situation yet. And I can only imagine how intimidating that must be for parents. But you cannot bury your head in the sand around this.
Right. Because it is a thing. I mean, honestly, Dominic, even this topic, I'm slightly uncomfortable talking about it. And you and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Even like this topic, I'm like, yeah, can we just maybe not do it?
I know.
Can we just like maybe talk about something else? But like the more and more we dive into this, we talk about stories of like, how did you learn about sex? How did you learn about porn? It's an important, critical part of a man's life that happens.
Totally.
And so I do love that we're doing this, even though it's uncomfortable, because it matters.
Yeah, it does matter.
And it's going to happen regardless. So maybe like let's do it slightly more consciously in a way that feels good instead of us like not wanting to think about it and wanting to shut it off as soon as we're done with it, because there's something in us that's telling us that ain't right.
I'm down with that, man. And you know, I think what you just said gives me this sense of awareness of, we've talked about this for years, where, you know, when you've built a business around this in the sexual wellness arena, and I spent 4 years in Sex Addicts Anonymous. I mean, I've had deep conversations about this. And for you and I to be uncomfortable talking about this stuff still shows how deeply entrenched some of like these stigmas, some of the guilt that there is around talking about, some of the fear there is talking about this. And you can only imagine the people who have not gone as far into this as we have, right? Who've never questioned it, how challenging and difficult it must be for them to think about these concepts, or even, you know, to hear us talk about that. And so we would love to hear, right? We would love to hear from you to say, like, is this blowing your mind? Is this frightening? Is this relevant to you? Is it coming off as irrelevant, or any reaction? We just kind of want to know where you're at as we're having these conversations, because, man, there's a lot of feels that are coming up on this side of it.
Yeah. We had one episode on masturbation. And there was a challenge at the end of that episode to go 10 days. Go 10 days without masturbation. Right? The challenge that I'm going to give myself, and for everybody listening to give you the same challenge, is seek porn that I know is of good ethics, of the organic grass-fed pasture.
How did you do that? Like, how did you find it?
Right, exactly. And at the very least, be conscious of what I am choosing to watch, period.
Totally.
Because I think even that quick pause of, wait a second, is this something where, does it feel like consent? Is it, if coming from a good place? I don't really know, but I think at least the awareness of every time I flip that laptop up is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yes. And you know, one thing, so to offer up an answer for that, like one of the things that worked for me, most of my life I watched like just two women who were amateur women, like real women who filmed their own sexual exploits. She doesn't even have a website anymore, but back in the day it was this woman named Celeste Fox. And then it was a woman named Janet Mason. And Janet Mason, she started her own website with her husband and liked to sleep with other men, filmed that. She became a porn star. She went like the mainstream route. But I could watch the two of them and felt good about it, because like they were doing this before the cameras turned on. And they wanted to share it because that gave them more pleasure. So whenever I watched it, I actually never felt guilty for what was happening behind the scenes. I felt guilty for all sorts of other reasons, right? But it was never about like, were the women consenting? Like they were having the time of their lives. So one arena that you may be able to go down is if you're able to search women who have started their own sites, who like have control and authority over what gets filmed and who they film with, and then go down that route. And if you want to send us the links of who those women are, we're all for it, because maybe you and I can start to create like a catalog for when people ask, we can point them in the right direction. And Lisa Ann sounds like someone, like from what I've spoken to her about, she only does scenes that she consents to in the right format with the actors that she wants to work with, so she could be another person. Yeah.
And something comes up to me with like women for porn is for women. It's not for me. That's not for guy porn, right? If it's a site made by a woman for heterosexual guys, like, okay, cool, I'm down with that. But I think a lot of we call it a stigma around like porn for women.
It means like, I can't watch it.
I can't watch it.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage is, based on what I saw with Erica Luss, based on what I saw with, there's one other person, I can't remember, Bella, Bella. It's actually pretty hot.
Is it?
It's pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. Maybe put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friend Bryony Cole, who is the founder of Future of Sex, and she's now also one of the content curator for MakeLoveNotPorn.com. So that's another arena where it's Make Love Not Porn is started by the woman named Cindy Gallup, who we've talked about her before on other podcasts, right? She's like I saw her speak like 8 years ago. She gets up on a stage. She says, I'm 50 years old and I like to sleep with men in their 20s. And within the first 7 minutes of having sex with them, I've been thrust into 11 different sexual positions, and I've realized they've been raised on a very different way of educating on porn than I was.
Or as you would call it, pornified.
Pornified, exactly. And she goes, I had to have these conversations about, what women in the porn world want, but what real women want. And then she created this entire site around Make Love Not Porn that actually has demonstrations of real people having sex, and they're all kind of self-submitted
It's
videos.
a crowdsourced thing too.
Crowdsourced.
Amateurs doing their thing.
Exactly. Now, I went on that site too, and I took a look at what was going on there, and that's also jarring because it is lots of bodies and shapes and scenarios that like are just not traditional from what I'm used to and what you're used to, and a lot of it was hard for me to become aroused at. And I think that's a big part of why Bryony has been asked to come on board to curate that content, is to maybe to filter it or to put it in a certain way where like, your tastes can easily be recognized and figure out like what is the entry point there from where we are now to where that site is now. There's like a Grand Canyon between the two. And I think it's her job to build the bridge so that like we can get to that space. And maybe that's what's needed is where are we now? Where are we trying to go? What are the steps of the bridge to get us there? And I think having more conversations like the one that you and I are having helps to lay down the bricks.
This is an important step one.
Totally.
Right, we don't have all the answers, but it's an important step one.
Yeah. Well, step one complete.
I'm going to go try some porn.
Have fun, bud. Hey, thanks for listening to the Man Amongst Men podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want more access to tools and resources, and you want information on our upcoming live events and retreats, head on over to www.doinnerwork.com.